Hello, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight, we are setting aside our modern comforts. We are dimming the lights on our present world, on our central heating, our soft mattresses, and our quiet private rooms. We are letting them fade into the background. We are stepping back, way back. Find a comfortable position. Allow the weight of your body to settle. Let your breathing slow, let your shoulders relax, and allow your mind to drift with me. We are traveling together into the deep past. We are journeying to a night so cold that your breath turns silver in the air. A night where the stars feel sharp enough to cut. Let's begin. It is late. The world is dark, and the ground beneath your feet is frozen solid. Your boots crunch over frost-hardened mud. The air is biting, a physical presence against your skin. You look up at the cottage. It is made of uneven stones, dark and silent. From a crooked chimney, the smell of smoke drifts, but it is faint, thin as a sigh. It is the only sign of life. Now, dim the lights in your mind. You push open the rough, heavy wooden door. It moves with a groan, and the cold follows you in. It enters with you like a guest who refuses to leave, a shadow that clings to your cloak. The cottage is small. You are standing in what is essentially one single room. The roof is low, so low you feel you could almost reach up and touch the beams. The walls are made of uneven stone, gathered from nearby fields. The fire, which was the center of life just hours ago, has burned down to embers. In this dim, fading glow, shadows tremble and leap across the beams. And you feel the temperature. You feel it instantly, like a physical weight pressing on your chest. It is not the clean, dry cold of a modern winter. It is a damp cold. A penetrating cold that seems to seep through everything you own, through your wool cloak, through your linen tunic, right into your bones. Yet somehow, this is home. This is the place where people lived, worked, loved, and dreamed. The first thing you notice after the cold is the air. It is heavy. It smells of peat smoke, a scent that never leaves, and boiled cabbage from the evening meal, and perhaps the faint, oily hint of wool grease. It's a heavy air, but it's alive. Every surface around you seems to sweat with condensation. The walls, thick as your arm, are damp to the touch. These stones were dragged from nearby fields, each one lifted by hand. Historians, even now, still argue about these walls. You can almost imagine the debate happening quietly over a mug of mead. One side insists that these thick stone walls must have provided some insulation. The other side, perhaps more practical, points out a simple, mainstream fact. Stone loves to stay cold, long after the fire dies. Stone holds the chill. You reach out and touch the wall. It sweats faintly. The moisture creeps in through invisible cracks, drawn by the simple physics of warm human breath meeting the outdoor frost. You wake, perhaps, sometime after midnight. The fire has fallen into quiet embers, glowing faintly in the darkness. Your own breath forms clouds in the air. The stone walls, rough and uneven, gleam faintly, as if holding a secret frost of their own. This is the moment when you truly understand what it means to sleep inside stone. The walls do not care if you are warm or cold. They simply exist. They absorb the day's meager heat, and they give back a slow, grudging chill that seeps into your bones. This small, humble space, this is the entire world for the family within. Shelter, work, and dreams all compressed into a single stone box. It's small, humble, and astonishingly, stubbornly alive. Inside this stone box, a family of 6 is trying not to freeze to death while they sleep. And perhaps, as the narrator of our source text imagines, they are joined by 2 goats and a hen with personality issues. It's a crowded, breathing space. You probably wouldn't survive this night yourself, not without a miracle, or at least without huddling beside the cow. Imagine the family preparing for their rest. The eldest son pokes the fire one last time, a quiet, repetitive movement. The mother mutters a prayer, her voice a low hum in the smoky air. The youngest child, already overcome by exhaustion, is curled up and asleep on a simple pile of straw. You watch them shuffle and settle. Each movement is economical, practiced, learned from a lifetime of repetition. They have survived winters before. They know this rhythm. It is a dance of survival. Gather together, share heat, sleep lightly. It is not romantic, though later storytellers would try to make it so. The smell is rank. It is the smell of animals, of human sweat, of unwashed wool. The floor is just packed earth, and it gives off its own damp, cold perfume. And yet, there is tenderness here. You see it as the father tucks the blanket around his daughter's shoulders. This blanket is not a single woven piece. It is a patchwork, a heavy quilt of rough wool and old, worn-out cloaks stitched together over years. You hear the tenderness as he whispers a blessing, something about saints watching the house until the dawn. Your gaze drifts to the hearth. It is the center of this world, a shallow pit lined with stones, glowing faintly. A pot swings over the coals, iron black and dented. This small fire is the soul of the house. The family tends this fire like a living creature. It is never, ever allowed to die completely. To a medieval peasant, this was not just a kitchen. It was the thin line between survival and the cold that pressed, always pressed against the door. If it goes out, the consequences are immediate and exhausting. Someone must trudge through the dark and the frost to a neighbor's house. They would carry a small clay pot designed to borrow a single glowing ember. And they would pray every step of the way back that the wind doesn't snuff it out. This ritual was called fire borrowing. In some villages, it was a cornerstone of neighborly trust. To refuse to share your fire, your single ember, could mark you as heartless or even cursed. Fire is not convenience. It is survival. You kneel closer, feeling that faint, precious warmth on your face. It is a warmth that is never enough, but it is always, always precious. As you kneel by that precious fire, you feel the smoke scratch your throat. You blink in the flickering light, watching the smoke coil lazily toward the low rafters. It doesn't rise up a neat chimney. Most peasants in Northern Europe slept in these single-room cottages where living, cooking, and sleeping all blurred together. And here is the quirky part. Many of these cottages had no chimneys at all. The smoke simply curled upward, searching for a way out. It would escape slowly through holes in the roof or through the gaps under the eaves. The result was predictable. Lungs that aged before their time. Rafters blackened into near charcoal. People adapted. They learned to live inside smoke as fish live in water. But this smoke, this constant, acrid presence, served a purpose. It was a smoky blessing. The quirky truth is that the smoke had several unexpected benefits. Meat hanging from the beams was slowly preserved, cured by the very air in the cottage. The smoke discouraged insects from nesting overhead. It even hardened the wooden beams, coating them with a smoky armor that resisted rot. Modern restorations still find these centuries-old rafters stained glossy black, proof of countless fires below. The debate, of course, remains. Some scholars claim this smoke drove insects out of the bedding and the thatch. Others think it simply made everyone half blind by the age of 40. It is very likely that both are true. Your gaze drifts upward, following the smoke to that roof. You notice the faint outline of thatch and the thin, dark cracks where, on a clear night, Stars might sometimes appear. Each gust of wind makes the rafters groan softly. Tiny flecks of straw, dislodged by the wind or by something moving above, fall from the darkness. This is the medieval ceiling. It is a living thing. It creaks, it sheds, and it breathes. It is a strange and fragile covering, this thin layer of vegetation standing between you and the frozen sky. The roof is made of bundles of straw tied to the wooden beams. It is layered thick, but it is never tight enough to be perfect. It is well recorded that many cottages use thatch mixed with mud or even animal dung. This strange combination, odd to our modern minds, actually made the roof heavier and more water-resistant. It helped the roof last longer and kept it from blowing away in a storm. The smell, however, was unforgettable. But to those who lived under it, that smell meant safety. And when it rains, the sound is soothing at first, like a lullaby, until, inevitably, it begins to drip through. A few drops fall, tapping into a pot kept near the bed for just this purpose. It is a quiet, steady rhythm that peasants grew used to. Curiously enough, these same roofs often housed creatures that treated them as home. Mice, sparrows, even hens nested among the straw. Farmers joked that their chickens were overhead tenants. The scratching, the fluttering, and the occasional thump in the night was simply part of the household symphony. The fire has quieted again, sinking to a soft amber pulse. But the air, despite the dying embers, feels warmer now. It feels softer. It is filled with the faint, rhythmic hum of shared breath. You shift slightly on the straw mattress, a rustling sound in the quiet, and you realize, with a deep understanding, that the warmth in this cottage does not come from the fire alone. It comes from people. It comes from bodies pressed together in quiet solidarity. This is the true secret of medieval survival, the art of shared heat. It is well known that families in these small cottages slept close. They slept pressed together, not only from affection, but from simple, cold necessity. The human body, after all, is a furnace, a small, slow-burning furnace. A cluster of bodies wrapped together in rough blankets can raise the air temperature in their immediate vicinity by several crucial degrees. It is a form of human insulation, improvised, alive, but remarkably effective. The idea of each person having their own bed, their own private space, would have seemed absurd to a medieval peasant family. It would have seemed wasteful, even foolish. Why waste warmth like that? So, picture the scene. It is the heart of the night. The family is settled. The father lies closest to the door. He sleeps there as both protector and as the first shield against the drafts that snake under the wood. The mother curls behind him. The youngest child, the most vulnerable, is tucked safely between them. The older children are nearby, a tangle of limbs and blankets, fitting themselves together like puzzle pieces. Privacy does not exist here. No one expects it. The sounds of sleep are familiar and constant. The soft murmurs of dreams, the shifting of straw, an occasional unapologetic snore. To our modern ears, it might seem chaotic, even unpleasant. But in this cottage, it is the sound of comfort. It is the sound of life. Because alone, you would freeze. Together, you endure. There is a deep tenderness in this arrangement. The mother's arm wrapped instinctively around her child. The father's hand resting lightly on the blanket's edge. The gentle, unified rise and fall of the family's breathing. In this world, warmth is love made physical. It is the shared heartbeat of survival. Some modern anthropologists suggest that this shared warmth created emotional bonds just as strong as the practical ones. When families slept side by side, night after night, through the long months of winter, they learned to breathe in rhythm. They learned to move as one. They learned to care instinctively for each other's comfort. As you listen, You can hear the quiet chorus of sleepers, and you realize there is a profound wisdom in this closeness. It teaches humility. It teaches patience. It teaches the art of dependence. The fire may wane, but the warmth continues, passing from body to body like a whispered promise. Art of shared heat was not limited to humans. The family's shared warmth was essential, but they had other, larger furnaces, and these furnaces were alive. Even the animals play their part. You look toward the edge of the sleeping area. A small piglet, or perhaps two, lies near the feet, breathing out a steady, damp warmth that seeps through the straw. The goat near the hearth shifts, emitting a quiet grunt, and the air stirs with its life. It is well known from historical records, from church writings, and from surviving illustrations that peasants often shared their living quarters with their animals through the cold months. Contemporary sources from the period mention that in many northern villages, livestock shared the living space at night. A cow, a few pigs, chickens, perhaps a goat or a dog, all occupied the same single room as the family. The idea seems strange, even repulsive to our modern sensibilities. But for those who lived by the harsh rhythm of the seasons, it was both practical and necessary. Cows, goats, and even geese were brought inside during the deep winter. Their body heat was a significant contribution, filling the air. A single cow, a large, breathing creature, could give off as much heat as several small fires. And its slow, rhythmic breathing, the gentle chewing of cud, filled the room like another heartbeat. This was not considered strange or unclean. The division between human and animal life was practical, not moral. Both sought warmth, both produced it, and in the depths of winter, both depended on one another. The presence of these animals was not accidental. It was carefully arranged. The family's bed, the precious straw mattress, stood near the hearth. The livestock occupied a slightly lower section of the floor, often closer to the door, where spilled straw and waste could be swept out more easily in the morning. There is a curious practice described in old accounts. Some families built low partitions, simple wooden planks or wattle fences to separate themselves from their animals. This was not for cleanliness. It was to keep the larger beasts, the cow or the pigs, from accidentally stepping on the sleeping children in the dark. The animals were as much a part of the nightly routine as the fire itself. Researchers, of course, remain divided on how peasants balanced the obvious smell and hygiene issues of this shared space. The medieval sense of clean was entirely different from ours. To them, filth was tolerable if it kept the cold out. Smoke, the ever-present smoke, disguised many odors, and the soot absorbed them. The atmosphere is heavy, but strangely comforting. There is a description from a 13th century observer who remarked that a cow's breath in winter was a blessing equal to fire. This is not poetic exaggeration. Those who slept beside their beasts were often the ones who survived the harshest winters. You wake before the dawn. The fire is nearly dead again, its last glow hidden under a blanket of gray ash. You shiver, pulling the rough blanket closer. It feels coarse against your skin. It is woven from homespun wool, thick and heavy with years of necessity. You are wrapped in the same material that once clothed the sheep in the field, now serving its second life as warmth. It was common knowledge in medieval times that every single scrap of fabric mattered. Peasants owned few garments. Most textiles were made at home, a laborious process of spinning and weaving. The blankets on the bed were not bought, they were accumulated. They were patchworks of old tunics, threadbare cloaks, and worn-out hoods. Each piece held a memory. A bit of your mother's cloak might rest beside a strip from your brother's sleeve. In a world where cloth took months of labor to make, nothing was ever wasted. You run your fingers over the weave. It is as rough as tree bark. The wool scratches, but it holds the heat like a secret. Beneath it, a layer of straw crinkles softly. To sleep under everything you own is not an act of desperation. It is a habit. It is the rhythm of winter. Curiously, in the colder regions of the north, people sometimes slept in their daytime clothes. They simply added layers instead of removing them. A tunic, a cloak, and a wool cap could mean the difference between a night spent shivering and a night spent in rest. One traveler in the 14th century observed this practice and remarked, with a hint of surprise, that the peasants slept dressed as if they feared to meet dawn in the open field. He was not wrong. Warmth was a form of armor, even in sleep. According to parish records from rural England, families might also use sheep hides with the fleece still attached as extra covers. The smell must have been earthy, pungent, and deeply animal, but it worked. You adjust your position, and the movement creates a faint creak from the wooden bed frame. The ropes strung beneath the straw mattress are loose. They sag like tired bones. Beds of this kind required regular physical tightening. This is the origin of the old saying, "Sleep tight." The phrase has survived for centuries, a simple instruction for comfort that few of us remember the origin of. You pull the blanket tighter, grateful for its simple weight. Grateful for the comfort of something, anything, heavy between you and the cold. There is an odd beauty in the simplicity of these layers. Wool, straw, linen, skin, and finally, breath. Each one trapping just a little more warmth than the last. You roll onto your side, and the straw beneath you whispers softly. The bed itself creaks, a tired voice in the quiet room. In the faint light of the dying embers, it looks nothing like our modern idea of comfort. It is a simple frame of rough-hewn timber, a lattice of sagging rope, and a pile of straw. Yet it holds the full weight of every night's dream. It is well recorded that medieval beds, even in these humble cottages, varied depending on the region and the wealth of the family. The very poorest, those with nothing, slept directly on the floor. They slept on simple piles of straw, sometimes contained within a canvas sack, which was called a bed tick. Others, perhaps with a bit more stability, had low wooden frames. These were strung with ropes woven in a loose crisscross pattern that sagged over time under the weight of the family. To tighten them, one would pull on a wooden peg or simply undo the knots and retie them, pulling the ropes taut. The saying, "sleep tight," that echo from the past, comes directly from this small nightly ritual of maintenance. The straw mattress that lay on top of those ropes was not a permanent item. It was a living part of the agricultural year, filled with whatever the season offered. It would be stuffed with fresh wheat straw after the harvest. In summer, it might be filled with dried rushes from the riverbank. In coastal towns, it might even be seaweed dried on the beaches. The scent of the bed changed with every refill. At first, it was fresh and pleasant, a faint memory of the fields and the sun. But after weeks of use, weeks of sweat, smoke, and the inevitable fleas, that sweetness faded. Still, it was softer and warmer than the cold, packed earth or the stone floor. Curiously, in a few rural areas, people used dried heather instead of straw. It smelled sharp and clean, and its springy stems made the bed noticeably softer. This was a rare luxury if you could find enough of it. Folklore naturally claimed that sleeping on heather brought good dreams and discouraged bad spirits. The real benefit, however, was probably just a better night's rest. Archaeological findings reveal that wealthier peasants, those with more resources, sometimes built box beds. These were marvels of insulation. They were beds enclosed on three sides with thick wooden panels. The warmth inside such a small, contained space must have been extraordinary. Even a single candle or just the breath of two people could raise the temperature noticeably. Some of these beds even had sliding doors or thick curtains that could be pulled shut at night, transforming them into tiny, private sleeping chambers. For a family living with no privacy, these enclosures offered both precious warmth and a rare moment of quiet. You can almost feel the comfort of lying inside one. The wood walls around you hum faintly, holding your breath in. Outside, the room is filled with the sounds of animals shifting and the slow, steady rhythm of the wind against the door. But inside the bed, the world narrows to a heartbeat, a flicker of warmth, and the smell of dry straw. The night stretches on. It feels like a slow river of darkness flowing through the cottage. The fire, once the bright center of the evening, has become a faint orange glow. Its heat is now more memory than presence. You can smell the last of the wood, that sweet, sharp tang of ash and smoke. It was common practice in the Middle Ages to let the fires burn down gradually. Wood was far too precious to be burned freely through the night. It was gathered by hand, a laborious task, or traded at great cost. Every single log, every stick mattered. To waste wood was to tempt hunger later. So, people learned to live not by defeating the cold, but by working alongside it. The hearth was tended like a living thing, fed and soothed, but never overindulged. A peculiar fact, often noted in household records, is that many peasants kept a single ember alive through the entire night by burying it in the ash. This simple, clever trick allowed the coal to smolder safely, unseen, insulated by its own refuse until morning. With the first pale light, the mother or the eldest child would approach the hearth. They would gently uncover the ember, feeding it small, dry twigs and bark. They would whisper to it, blow on it with patience and breath, as if greeting an old friend. This practice saved countless hands from the frozen misery of trying to spark a new fire from flint and steel in the icy air. You lie there now, staring at the dim hearth, and you can feel the cold reaching its peak. It is that deep, bone-level chill that arrives just before the dawn, when even the air itself seems to be asleep. The breath of the animals nearby clouds faintly in the dark. Every creature in the room has curled smaller, drawn in tight against the frost. According to chronicles from Northern Europe, the winter nights inside these stone cottages could, and often did, reach freezing temperatures. Water left in a wooden bowl or a clay cup would crust with ice. It is hard to imagine finding true rest in such conditions. Yet, people managed. They layered themselves in every scrap of warmth they had, straw, wool, bodies, and faith. And curiously enough, sleep itself seemed different then. It is well documented by medieval diaries and early church writings that people of this age did not sleep in one long, unbroken stretch as we do. Instead, they experienced what historians now call segmented sleep. The night was divided into two distinct parts. The first sleep began soon after sunset. It was a deep sleep, born of exhaustion, and it lasted for a few hours until the middle of the night. After that first sleep, the entire household would wake. They would enter a period of quiet wakefulness, a gentle pause that lasted for an hour or more, before the second sleep carried them to dawn. This pattern was so common, so unremarkable, that phrases like the first sleep and the second rest appeared casually in letters and diaries and even in court confessions. This was not seen as insomnia or a disorder. It was simply the natural rhythm of the night. During that in-between time, that watch between sleeps, the cottage became a place of muted, quiet life. The father might rise, his form a dark shadow against the embers. He would stir the fire, perhaps add a single small log, or check on the animals. The mother might nurse an infant in the dim light, or kneel beside the hearth to whisper her prayers. Some took this quiet, solitary hour to do small tasks, to mend a tool, to twist new rope from hemp, or to share a low, hushed conversation before returning to the straw bed. It was not restlessness, it was routine. Curiously, this midnight interval was also a time for reflection and intimacy. Couples, surrounded by their sleeping children and animals, often spoke in hushed tones. They shared thoughts they would never voice in the bright, busy light of day. Old songs called it the watch between sleeps, a small, tender pocket of time that belonged only to them. Archaeological research and medical historians now agree that without the pervasive blue light of our modern world, the human body tends to fall back into this two-phase pattern naturally. The human body, guided by its ancient circadian rhythms, simply followed the sun. As a result, people spent far more time in bed than we do today, not sleeping continuously, but existing in a warm, half-conscious state of thought and rest. You can picture it. The faint crackle of rekindled coals, the soft murmur of voices, a child asking a question, a parent whispering a story. It feels less like a fear of the cold and more like a quiet conversation with it. The fire becomes a clock, its gentle glow marking the hours more softly than any bell. A curious superstition from medieval England claimed that staring into the last ember before sleep could reveal the state of your soul. A bright, steady glow meant peace. A flickering, dying coal meant sin or trouble ahead. People took this seriously. They would whisper apologies or prayers to the fire before turning away. In these long nights of smoke and silence, the fire truly was a companion. It was almost alive. The second sleep comes slowly, wrapped in the hush that follows the fire's last sigh. You stir, and you feel the fabric of your nightshirt. It is coarse, but it is familiar. It is a comfort that scratches rather than soothes. Medieval bedtime was not about softness or privacy. It was about ritual, about layers, and about a deep, abiding faith that the night would pass without harm. It is well recorded that even the poorest peasants had some form of night garment. Usually, it was the exact same linen shirt worn during the day, simply loosened at the neck and belted with a strip of cloth. Wealthier folk, perhaps a farmer with a bit more land, might own a separate nightshirt, long and simple. It was meant to protect both the skin and the bedding from grime. Cleanliness was relative, but linen had one great gift. It breathed, even in the heavy, smoky air of the cottage. That mattered. You tug at the rough sleeve, feeling it scratch against your wrist. The shirt, like everything else, smells faintly of smoke and wool fat, a mixture that never entirely leaves the skin. Over it, you wear a wool cap pulled down low to keep in the heat. This was universal. Everyone slept with one, from lords in their grand manors to shepherds in their tiny huts. Hair traps warmth, but an uncovered head loses it fast. In the coldest months, even the children wore caps to bed, sometimes with ear flaps tied securely under the chin. Curiously, small accessories played big roles in nightly comfort. Socks or hose, often patched so many times they looked more like stitching than cloth, were frequently kept on. Gloves, too, were sometimes worn indoors. Archaeological studies of bedding from this time reveal another layer of comfort. Dried lavender, mint, or wormwood were sometimes placed between the bedding layers, tucked into the straw. People believed these strong-smelling herbs repelled fleas and sweetened the air. Whether or not they truly worked against the insects, their faint scent must have carried a whisper of summer into the bleak, frozen heart of winter. It was the medieval version of a comfort candle, fragile but hopeful. You picture yourself in that world, lying still under the heavy, patched blanket, the wool cap pulled low, the faint, clean scent of herbs mixing with the ever-present ash in the air. The cold touches your nose, but the rest of you is warm enough. These rituals were about more than just the body. They were for the mind. According to old folk customs, some families placed a sprig of rosemary or garlic near the sleeping space. These were meant to ward off illness and evil spirits. The scent was sharp, earthy, and strangely reassuring. In a world where medicine was scarce and invisible forces were often blamed for disease, such charms offered a tangible comfort. The line between belief and necessity was as thin as the blanket that covered them. Researchers have noted that medieval people seamlessly combined formal prayer with practical superstition. A cross might be drawn in the ash on the hearthstone. a quiet invocation whispered to St. Blaise or St. Bridget. Even a pinch of salt, a valuable commodity, might be tossed into the fire for luck. These small gestures filled the long, dark hours with a sense of control, a way of managing the unknown. In the absence of central heating, faith itself became a form of insulation. Insulation took many forms. One curious regional tradition in Scandinavia involved sleeping with a small iron blade tucked under the bed. This was to keep away trolls or night walkers. In parts of France, it was a rosary hung from the bedpost. In rural England, some families left a cup of water near the window. This was for any wandering souls, so they would not linger in envy of the living. Scholars still discuss how seriously these customs were taken. But what matters most is what they reveal. People wanted peace as much as they wanted warmth. This protection was also practical. The night watch belonged to everyone, including the animals. The dog, a fixture in the cottage, played a crucial role. It guarded, but it also warmed. A dog curled at the foot of the bed provided a comfort that went beyond simple defense. Folk tales are full of dogs sensing spirits or danger long before the humans did. Their low growls were interpreted as warnings against invisible threats. In truth, their keen ears simply caught the sound of a wolf or a stranger that the sleeping people missed. But in these nights, faith and practicality blended together easily. If a cow grew restless or a dog barked, it might mean danger outside. Even the chickens, brought inside, played their part. They were not just there for warmth, but for protection. Foxes and thieves prowled freely in the darkness, and a chicken kept inside was one less lost to the night. Their quiet, intermittent clucking became just another household sound, as familiar and soothing as a child's sigh. As the first faint morning light begins to seep into the room, your gaze drifts toward the window. You open your eyes and see frost glittering on the inside of the glass substitute. It is not glass at all. It is a stretched, thin film of oiled parchment. It blurs the outside world into a soft, indistinct haze of light and shadow. In this dim, gray glow, you realize how fragile the barrier is. It is just this thin, oily sheet between the warmth of the cottage and the vast, frozen cold beyond. It was common practice for peasants to use these materials, oiled cloth, parchment, or even stretched and dried animal bladder, as window coverings. True glass existed, but it was found in monasteries and the halls of lords. It was rare and impossibly costly. This thin material let in a precious sliver of light while blocking the sharpest edge of the wind. It could not, however, keep out the cold entirely. The result was a strange, constant balance of light and draft. It was a compromise, a negotiation between vision and warmth. You can feel it now. A faint, persistent breeze sneaking in through the cracks around the wooden frame. The chill moves like a ghost across your face, gentle but unmistakable. Archaeological findings confirm what common sense suggests. Windows in these stone cottages were often tiny, no larger than a man's forearm in width. The smaller the opening, the less heat escaped. In summer, wooden shutters might be left ajar to let in air, but in winter, every gap was a threat. Thick, uneven wooden shutters were pulled tight at night and fastened with iron hooks. Sometimes, straw was stuffed along the edges to block the whistling wind. These methods sound primitive, but they worked well enough to keep families alive. Curiously enough, the oiled parchment itself gave the room a special, unique quality of light. The sun did not pour in. It did not illuminate. It diffused softly, painting everything in the room in tones of amber and honey. It was a dim light, but it was warm to the eyes. It created a permanent twilight that softened the hard edges of the stone and the rough-hewn wood. In some northern regions, animal bladders, often from pigs or sheep, were stretched over wooden frames instead. When dried and rubbed with oil or resin, the material became translucent, watertight, and flexible. Historians still discuss whether it provided any meaningful insulation, but its role in shaping the atmosphere is undeniable. Through it, daylight arrived like a memory rather than an illumination. A peculiar practice mentioned in rural chronicles describes people sealing the window edges with animal fat during the coldest weeks. The fat would harden in the chill, plugging the gaps. When it melted slightly from the fire's warmth, it gave off a faint odor that mingled with the smoke and straw. Not pleasant, but effective. You wake again, sometime before the dawn. The air has grown still and heavy. The fire is long gone, reduced to cold ash. You shift under the heavy blanket, and something tickles your neck. You brush it away instinctively. It is nothing unusual here. The cottage, for all its shared warmth and stubborn endurance, is also alive in ways you would rather not think about. It is well documented by medieval chroniclers and later physicians that the beds in peasant homes teemed with life. Fleas, lice, and mites thrived in the straw. They lived in the seams of clothing and in the deep, warm folds of the woolen blankets. Cleanliness was not entirely neglected, but it was severely limited by the lack of running water, the lack of soap, and the sheer effort required. A family might bathe fully a few times a year, if that, usually around major holidays like Easter. Between those rare ceremonial occasions, the body simply adapted to its companions. There was a curious note found in a 15th century medical text. It suggests that the thick smoke from peat fires actually helped keep biting vermin at bay. Whether this was true or just hopeful imagination, it reveals how people perceived their surroundings. The smoke was not just warmth. It was a kind of invisible, scratchy armor against discomfort. You lift the blanket slightly, and the smell rises up. Straw, wool, sweat, and smoke. The straw crackles softly as you move. Over time, this bedding flattens. The dry stems break into dust. New straw is added on top every few weeks, creating a layered history of nights gone by. The cycle of infestation and cleaning was endless. It was simply accepted as part of life, not something to be conquered or eradicated. There is an odd resilience in this acceptance. To our modern minds, it might seem unbearable, but to them, it was just another texture of existence. The body adjusted. The skin grew tougher. The itch became background noise. A curious story from a 13th century French folktale tells of a farmer who sprinkled herbs and ashes into his bed to keep away what he called creeping guests. Some regions used dried mint or tansy for the same purpose, believing the strong, bitter scent would drive away pests. There is even a certain dark humor in how they treated these inconveniences. In some regions, fleas were jokingly called the poor man's jewelry. Finding a few in your blanket meant that at least you were still warm enough for life to thrive. Laughter, perhaps, was the only luxury that was free of cost. Sleep, in this context, is never deep or still. It is a constant negotiation between exhaustion and irritation. And yet, somehow, people still dreamed. They still woke. They still lived full lives inside these imperfect living beds. The cold has deepened again. The air that slips through the ill-fitting door feels sharp, sharp enough to slice through breath. Someone in the cottage stirs. A shadow near the hearth moves, pulling a small clay jug from the shadows. You smell it before you see it. That sweet, sour, earthy aroma of ale. It is a quiet comfort in a world without modern warmth. It is a liquid blanket for the soul. It is well recorded that peasants in medieval Europe rarely drank water straight from wells or streams, especially not in winter. It was often contaminated and, in winter, possibly frozen. Instead, they brewed a weak ale, known universally as small beer. It was very low in alcohol, barely stronger than modern lemonade. But the brewing process, the boiling, made it safe to drink. And just as importantly, it was nourishing. The barley and oats left in the mixture added calories, a faint sweetness, and a little body to otherwise meager diets. You can imagine the father now, seated by the dying ashes, taking a careful sip from the jug. The ale is not cold. It has been sitting by the fire's memory. It is flat, but it is soothing. It slides down the throat and spreads a faint, gentle heat through the chest. He passes the jug to the mother, who drinks quietly before handing it back. The children, if they stir, will have their turn too. Even they drink small beer, not for pleasure, but for survival. Curiously enough, records from manor accounts mention that some families brewed this ale at home, using whatever grain they could find: barley, oats, rye, or, in hard times, even dried peas. The result was often cloudy, thick, and faintly sour. It would not win any prizes, but it kept the body moving and it kept the cold at bay. The smell of yeast and malt lingered in cottages year-round, joining the permanent perfume of smoke and sweat. The act of sharing a drink before settling into the second sleep was a form of communion. It was a wordless agreement that life, however hard, still contained these small shared kindnesses. One curious detail from brewing guides of the period mentions that some peasants added honey or herbs like yarrow or bog myrtle when they could afford them. These ingredients changed the taste and gave the illusion of strength. Some believed these herbs had medicinal powers, capable of protecting against fever or melancholy. Perhaps they did, if only in spirit. The drink's warmth is not strong enough to last, but it leaves behind something gentler, a calm hum that settles between the ribs. The darkness outside might stretch on forever, but inside there is still flavor, still ritual, and still meaning. The night folds back in, quiet and immense. The cottage feels smaller now, wrapped tightly in the grip of the frost. You can sense the change in the air, that brittle, absolute stillness that comes when the temperature falls to its cruelest. The fire glows faintly, a trembling heart of red beneath its blanket of ash. In the dimness, you hear a sound that has nothing to do with the wind or the wood. You hear the faint, rhythmic murmur of prayer. It is well known from surviving letters and sermons that medieval peasants prayed before bed. They prayed not only out of deep faith, but out of a deep and rational fear. Night was a time of profound uncertainty. Darkness carried both physical and spiritual threats. A freezing wind could steal the life from a sleeping child as swiftly as a fever. And in the deep shadows, just beyond the firelight, invisible dangers seemed to move. To close one's eyes without a blessing felt reckless. You watch as the father, sitting upright on his straw bed, makes the sign of the cross. His fingers are cracked from labor, the nails blackened with work, but the motion is slow and deliberate. His lips move silently, forming the words passed down from parents and priests alike. He prays for the fire to hold. He prays for the walls to stand. He prays for his children to wake again when the morning comes. Curiously enough, these bedtime prayers in rural communities were often mixed with older folk charms. A whispered plea to the Virgin Mary might be followed by a murmured rhyme against the frost or against spirits that walked in the dark. A small cross might be drawn on the hearthstone with a charred stick, a bit of salt scattered near the door, or an iron knife placed beneath the bed. These were all common protections. To our modern eyes, it seems like superstition. To them, it was simply balance. It was faith for the soul and precaution for the body. In parts of Northern Europe, families invoked Saint Bridget, the guardian of the hearth, who was believed to walk the land on cold nights, blessing the fires of the faithful. You can hear it now, the mother's voice, low and rhythmic. She is reciting words in Latin, a language she does not fully understand, but she knows their power.
In manus tuas, Domine, into your hands, O Lord. The sound fills the room like another form of light. The children, half asleep, stir and murmur, their small hands copying the sleepy devotion.
The wind outside moans faintly through the thatch, and the sound makes the mother pause. She glances toward the door, her eyes catching the faint reflection of the embers. For a heartbeat, she just listens. Then she whispers another line, one that belongs not to the church, but to old village memory. Keep out the wandering cold. Keep safe the sleeping souls. There is something deeply human in that blend of reverence and fear. Faith here is not abstract. It is spoken in the language of survival.
The night passes slowly, but the morning does not arrive with sunlight. It creeps in as a dim gray glow through the parchment window, a light thick with mist and cold.
You wake before the others. You wake to a profound stillness. You feel your body heavy and stiff. It is the ache of long hours spent curled tight for warmth. Every joint protests. Every breath you take clouds in the air.
It is well observed by historians of daily life that sleep during the Middle Ages was not a luxury. It was an act of survival. For most peasants, it was less about rest and more about conserving energy. The winter months demanded endurance, not productivity. When daylight lasted only a few short hours, the body obeyed nature's rhythm. It surrendered to the darkness, not for pleasure, but for preservation.
You sit up slightly. The rough blanket slides off your shoulders. The cold rushes in instantly, biting against your skin. It feels like the air is made of knives.
The fire has gone out, completely, leaving behind only a mound of pale gray ash and a few dark stones that hold no trace of heat. Your breath rises in clouds, visible proof of your own life, and a house that feels almost frozen. It is recorded in travelers' journals and household accounts that frost often formed inside peasant cottages during the coldest months. Water in cups froze solid. Thin sheets of ice coated the stone walls nearest the door. Some mornings, families awoke to see their own footprints marked in frost on the earthen floor, where the cold had crept in during the dark. To us, it might sound unbearable. To them, it was simply winter's way. A curious account written by a 15th century monk described this state of being perfectly. He called sleep a small death that saves. He observed that the peasants in winter seemed to live half their lives asleep, resting not from fatigue, but from necessity. To remain awake too long was to burn precious energy. It was to invite hunger sooner. Sleep became a kind of wisdom. A curious line from a 14th century prayer book reads, "He who endures the cold endures God's trial." The phrase captures the spirit of this life. Endurance was not only physical, but moral. It was a kind of devotion through suffering. Warmth was not expected. It was earned. The father wakes now. He rubs his face with calloused hands. He reaches toward the hearth, feeling for warmth, and sighs softly when he finds only ash. Without speaking, he stands. He pulls on his boots, which are stiff with frost. He steps outside into the white, still air and returns moments later with splinters of wood and a small sack of dried peat. The routine is automatic. It is half labor, half prayer. The light filtering through the parchment window is gray and thin. The father is kneeling by the hearth. He stirs the embers, searching for that single buried coal he saved from the night before. It was common practice for families to begin their days long before the sun rose fully. Winter daylight was precious, far too brief to waste. And the first task was always the same: revive the fire. Without it, nothing else could happen. No food, no light, no comfort. The fire was not just a tool, it was a companion that demanded care at every dawn. A curious entry in a 15th century household manual reminds its readers to feed the flame as one feeds the soul, with patience and breath. The line feels poetic, but it was meant to be literal. To coax a single fading coal back to life, one needed slow, steady breath, the kind of breath that came only with practice. You watch the process unfold. The father finds the ember. The mother joins him, blowing gently until the faint orange spark turns to gold. The father adds twigs. The flame trembles, catches, and grows. Its light spills outward, touching the frosty walls with soft color. Everyone in the room leans toward it instinctively. It is more than heat. It is reassurance that another day has begun. Soon, the pot is set over the flame, filled with yesterday's thin broth and a handful of oats. The smell begins to spread through the room, heavy and sweet. Researchers studying medieval households often point out that these mornings began in silence. Voices were kept low, out of habit, or perhaps out of respect for the fragility of the new fire. The children watch and learn, their hands clasped around their wooden bowls, their eyes wide, reflecting the growing flame. Curiously enough, warmth was also a form of social order. The place nearest the fire, the most precious spot, belonged to the one working it, usually the mother. The father stood just behind her, or perhaps by the door, preparing his tools or fetching food for the animals. The children stayed farther back, their job to wait until called. Everyone had a place in this silent choreography of mourning. A peculiar detail in an account from a German village tells of families who would place their bare feet near the hearthstones as soon as the fire was alive. The sudden spreading heat against the cold skin was said to wake the body faster than food. Some even believed it strengthened the heart. Whether it was superstition or simple pleasure, the ritual gave the day its true beginning. The house warms not only through heat, but through motion. Every breath, every stirred pot, every shared silent glance. By the time the sun reaches its highest, palest arc in the sky, the world outside the stone walls is a dazzling, silent white. Snow covers every path, and the air carries the kind of profound silence that makes even thought move slowly. Inside the cottage, however, the day hums with small sounds. The clink of the iron pot against the hearthstones, the solid thud of a new log being placed on the fire, the low moo of the cow shifting in its corner. It is a living quiet. It is not emptiness. It is rhythm. You rest against the wall, listening. The wall is cold, but you listen. Each sound seems magnified in the stillness. The drip, drip, drip of melted frost falling from the roof beams. The faint, tired creak of the ropes on the bed as someone shifts their weight. The soft sigh of breath escaping through chapped lips. These noises, together, create the music of a medieval village. It is the song of endurance, sung beneath the snow. It is well noted by travelers and chroniclers from the period that winter nights in the countryside carried their own unique soundscape. With no carriages on distant roads, no hum of industry, the world was reduced to its absolute essentials: wind, wood, and the voices of animals. The human ear, living in this quiet, became incredibly sensitive to every nuance. You could tell the weather was about to change by the specific way the rafters shifted and groaned. You could tell if someone was outside by the way the dog's breathing altered as it slept by the door. Curiously enough, people sometimes spoke of the night as having layers of sound. The first layer was the obvious one: the wind, the movement of the animals. The second belonged to the house itself, the living timbers expanding and contracting with the cold. The third layer was softer still. It was what they called the hush.
This was the absolute silence that came when even the wind seemed to freeze. In that profound silence, many claimed they could hear God thinking. A peculiar tradition noted in parts of rural France involved placing a small bell on the door latch at night. The tinkling sound served as both an alarm and a comfort. If it rang suddenly, it might mean the wind had forced the door open, or that something larger, an animal or a thief, was trying to get in. More often, it simply chimed softly as the door moved with the draft, a gentle reminder that the world outside still breathed. Sleeping with one ear open was not a metaphor. It was a habit, a skill, born of necessity. You listen now, and you can hear the strange, quiet dialogue between silence and noise. The day fades again, quickly, and with it comes the long, dominant stretch of night that defines the rhythm of winter. The family settles once more near the hearth. The fire is small but steady. The children lean against their mother's side, half asleep already, lulled by the growing warmth. The father mends a broken leather strap by the firelight, his hands moving with practiced skill. The smell of smoke and wool fills the air, and you realize that even love has its own warmth here. It is a warmth measured in quiet, practical gestures rather than in words. It is well known from parish marriage records and travelers' accounts that these medieval homes offered little to no privacy. Families lived, worked, and slept all in the same single space. The closeness of the night, therefore, brought both comfort and complication. Marriage in such a world was not the affair of candlelit rooms or whispered private vows. It was an alliance. It was about survival, companionship, and the literal physical sharing of heat. Curiously, many peasant couples viewed marriage as both sacred and profoundly practical. A husband and wife were partners in labor before they were anything else. Their bond was not tested by grand passions, but by the daily, relentless grind of hunger, cold, and work. Yet at night, when the fields slept under frost and the entire world shrank to the size of this single smoky room, they found something tender amid the necessity. You can imagine the intimacy of shared warmth. Not the romance of soft words, but the simple, vital connection of two bodies sheltering each other from the cold. The bed, narrow and rough, becomes a place of absolute trust. The act of curling close is both affection and survival. To love someone in this place is to help keep them alive. One curious note found in a rural court record describes a young couple who built a curtain around their bed from old patched cloth. They called it their house within the house. It was their only claim to solitude in a world that offered none. Researchers still discuss how emotional relationships even functioned in such cramped quarters. Some believe affection must have been muted by exhaustion, that love was just duty and nothing more. But others, examining folk songs and the few surviving letters, argue the very opposite. They argue that hardship deepened emotional bonds. It made gestures more meaningful. Words were rare but powerful. When warmth itself was scarce, the smallest touch mattered most. The mother looks across the fire now, meeting her husband's eyes. They do not speak, but their gaze holds the quiet, shared weight of years, of shared labor, and of shared winters. In this life, love is not declared. It is performed again and again until it becomes as natural and necessary as breathing. The night has turned quiet again. The fire pulses low. You open your eyes in the dimness and see a small shape moving. It is a child, no more than 5 or 6 years old. He is rising from a small straw pallet to crawl closer to the central warmth. The mother, without fully waking, shifts just enough to make space. The child burrows in beside her, a small, contented sigh escaping him like the exhale of a kitten. It is widely noted in parish and household records that children in medieval peasant homes slept close to their parents, often in the very same bed. Separate rooms were a luxury reserved for the highest nobles. Even separate mattresses were rare. Most families shared what they had, layering straw and blankets to make one common nest. This closeness was not a sign of indulgence. It was, like everything else, a sign of necessity. The smaller the circle, the warmer the sleep. Curiously, the children's places in the bed often followed an unwritten, practical order. The youngest, the most vulnerable, slept between the parents. The older ones nestled on the outer edges, or perhaps shared a smaller straw pallet on the floor, covered with their own cloaks. It was a shifting, fluid arrangement, practical rather than planned. The important thing was that no one slept alone. In a winter this severe, isolation was not just lonely, it was dangerous. One traveling friar, visiting a cottage on a freezing night, described the scene with a perfect image. He said he found the babes tucked as birds beneath the hen. The image fits. Children huddled beneath their parents' arms, their small bodies absorbing and giving back heat. The sound of their breathing, light and rhythmic, filled the room like a living lullaby. But this closeness was also about safety. A peculiar account from an English manor roll mentions a fine being imposed on a peasant family whose child fell into the hearth during the night. It sounds cruel to us, but it reveals something important. The hearth, though the source of all life, was also perilous. Parents kept their youngest close, not just for warmth, but for safety from the embers. Curiously enough, the lullabies from this era often spoke of both warmth and fear. "Sleep, my heart, till the frost is gone," one old verse begins, "and angels guard the fire till dawn." These songs were not only for comfort, but for courage. They told children that the dark would end, that the fire would hold, and that their parents' arms were a shield. One custom recorded in Scandinavia describes parents giving each child a smooth stone from the hearth at bedtime. The stone would be warmed briefly in the coals and then wrapped in a scrap of cloth. The child would hold it against their stomach until sleep came. It was a small piece of the fire's strength transferred by touch. This is not comfort as we know it. It is something older, more primal. It is the knowledge that warmth survives when it is shared. The night wears on, and the cottage settles into a silence so deep it feels thick enough to touch. You stir slightly, and the air moves around you, heavy with scent. It is not an unpleasant smell, but it is a layered one. It is rich with the story of everything that happens in this small enclosed space. The sharp smell of smoke and peat, the smell of wool and human sweat, the faint, lingering aroma of dried herbs, old straw, and the sweetness of baked grain. All of it blends together into something unmistakably human. It is the smell of life contained within stone walls. It is well noted in accounts by travelers and early natural philosophers that the scent of a medieval home was impossible to forget. Those who visited peasant cottages often wrote, with a mix of fascination and disgust, that they smelled of earth and breath. There was no perfume strong enough to mask it, no soap that could erase it. The fire burned constantly, and everything, hair, cloth, skin, absorbed its smoke, until even the air itself felt like it had weight. Yet, for those who lived here, this was not filth. This was not discomfort. It was familiarity. It was the perfume of survival. Curiously, not all the smells were accidental. Some were deliberately added to fight the less welcome ones. Bundles of dried mint, sage, or lavender were hung from the rafters. The mother of the household would scatter these herbs near the hearth, or crush juniper needles in her hands before sweeping the earthen floor. The sharp, clean scent would cut through the smoke and give the room a fleeting, momentary freshness.
A peculiar description, written by a visiting priest in the early 15th century, tells of him stepping into a home so smoky that he could not see the faces within until his eyes adjusted. He complained of his watering eyes and the constant taste of soot on his tongue. But, he admitted, the warmth therein is the warmth of good people. His words, half critical and half admiring, capture the paradox of such places. Unbearable to outsiders, but indispensable to those within. Archaeological evidence shows that the soot inside these cottages accumulated over centuries, turning the ceilings and beams a glossy pitch black. Yet, this very soot preserved the wood. It sealed it from rot and from insects. The same substance that choked the lungs also saved the home. The balance between harm and help was constant. To modern senses, it might feel oppressive, but to them, it meant comfort. To smell the fire was to know with certainty that it still burned. Evening returned sooner than expected, as it always does in the deep of winter. The light fades quickly, slipping through the cracks of the roof and turning the air the color of pewter. The cold creeps back into the stones, a patient and familiar visitor. But tonight, this night, feels different. The air hums with something rare, a faint vibration of anticipation. It is a feast night, one of the few times all year when warmth, real warmth, belongs to everyone. It is well recorded in both parish chronicles and manor log books that these winter festivals were the heartbeats of medieval life. After weeks, even months of meager meals and cold silence, the village would gather its strength to celebrate. These moments of abundance, often tied to holy days, were less about luxury and more about simply remembering joy. Food, drink, firelight, and laughter. For one night, they replaced the daily monotony of endurance. Inside the cottage, the family prepares. The father has returned with a small joint of salted meat, a precious treasure. The mother grinds grain into coarse flour, mixing it with a rare bit of honey and milk for bread. The smell of roasting fat and baking yeast fills the air, blending with the smoke and transforming the small space into something almost sacred. Curiously, on feast nights, the fire was fed generously. Wood that would normally be rationed piece by piece is burned freely. The flames leap high, washing the stone walls with a bright, dancing orange light. The glow reaches even the darkest, coldest corners. And for once, no one cares if the smoke stings their eyes. Warmth itself becomes a symbol of gratitude. Researchers of medieval culture often note that warmth and feasting were inseparable. The act of gathering around the hearth was both physical and emotional nourishment. The same fire that kept the frost from the door also baked the bread, cooked the meat, and lit the faces of the family with its glow. You can almost see it. The fire burns bright, crackling like laughter. The children sit cross-legged on the floor, their eyes wide, as the father turns the meat over the flames. The mother hums a tune from her childhood, a soft melody that fits perfectly into the sound of sizzling fat. Folklore from several regions claim that the spirits of the ancestors visited their old homes on these winter feast nights. It was said that they sat quietly by the fire, invisible but content, joining in the warmth they once knew. To honor them, families would leave a small portion of food near the hearth, a gesture of remembrance and respect. Historians have often wondered how such simple, rare gatherings could leave such deep, lasting impressions. Perhaps it is because warmth, once shared, becomes memory. Each feast night etched itself into the heart. The memory of this night, the laughter and the full bellies, will return in the darkest, coldest hours of February, when cold and hunger press the hardest. Memory itself becomes a second fire. The feast has ended, but the warmth of it, the feeling of it, lingers like perfume. The air inside the cottage feels thicker, almost golden, from the fire's memory. The children have fallen asleep quickly, full and warm. The mother hums quietly as she tidies what remains of the meal, her movements slow, deliberate, and calm. The father sits by the dying fire. His hands are open toward it, as if in quiet conversation with the fading light. It is well attested in chronicles and family letters that after these feast nights, a rare sense of peace would settle over homes like this. It was not the loud celebration of a grand hall, but something smaller and more profound. It was a pause, a deep breath taken between the endless, pressing demands of winter. You sit in the hush that follows. You realize that this quiet is not emptiness. It is fullness. It is the sound of everything that needs no words. In the Middle Ages, silence was not feared as it often is today. It was understood. It was space. It was a kind of sacred stillness that followed great effort and deep gratitude alike. A curious detail in a 15th century spiritual guide advises peasants to let their minds cool as the embers do. The phrase feels almost modern in its wisdom. To slow down after labor, to let the heart find its rhythm again, was seen as both a moral and a physical necessity. Life demanded this balance between movement and stillness, between sound and silence, between heat and cold. Historians of medieval domestic life often note that nights like this, when the belly was full and the fire was warm, were when the stories were told. They were told slowly, in the dark, to the rhythm of the fading fire. The tales were old ones, stories of saints and miracles, of clever foxes and foolish kings, of wise wives and wandering spirits. They were not written down. They were passed along through memory, a chain of spoken warmth that stretched across generations. You imagine the father beginning one of those tales, his voice low and rough from years of work in the fields. The children, half asleep, murmured of familiar responses. The mother listens with a faint smile, her hands still busy, mending a tear in the blanket by the last of the light. A traveling scholar in the 14th century described sitting among peasants and listening to their stories. He wrote, with astonishment at their detail, "Their words move as embers move, glowing brighter with each telling." You realize these stories were not just entertainment. They were protection. They filled the silence. They pushed back the cold and the vast, unknown dark that waited just outside the stone walls. The mind, warmed by imagination, found courage where the body could not. The last of the fire fades into shadow. It leaves behind only a faint red glow that clings stubbornly to the ash. The house breathes in the silence, its thick walls holding the memory of warmth. You lie awake for a while, your eyes open to the dark, and you can almost feel the weight of centuries pressing gently against the still air. Everything is quiet now. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. It is well recorded by chroniclers that winter nights often ended this way, slow, still, and almost sacred. There are no candles, no lanterns, just darkness wrapped around the faint, dying pulse of the hearth. The human eye learned to see in shades of shadow, to read the outlines of loved ones by the ghostly glow of cooling embers. To those who lived here, this was not emptiness, it was completion. A curious entry in an old Benedictine text describes the dark as a form of grace. It claimed that the absence of light allowed the soul to rest, freed from the distractions of the world. Perhaps that is what you feel now. The darkness is not frightening. It is gentle. It is protective. It hides the hardship, it softens thought, and it turns everything that moves into a kind of dream. You realize how small this space is, yet how large it feels. Within these few square meters, the entire story of human survival unfolds night after night. Fire, food, faith, and love. The night does not hide these things, it holds them. Outside, Frost spreads across the fields like a silent silver tide. Inside, the air is thick with breath and memory. You understand now, as you lie in this imagined stillness, how people survived the endless winter. It was not just by fire or by food, it was by rhythm. They accepted the cold as a part of living, and in that deep acceptance, they found a quiet peace. The fire's last glow fades into blackness. The house becomes one with the night. You understand now why they did not freeze. The secret was never the fire alone. It was togetherness. It was the shared breath, the layered blankets, the patience of waiting for the light. It was the rhythm of survival turned into an art. The air is cool, but no one feels the cold anymore. The warmth lingers, invisible, woven into the straw, the wool, and the dreams. The fire may be gone, but the heat remains. The darkness feels soft, not empty, but full of life, waiting quietly for the dawn. The last ember glows one final time, a tiny sun caught in the ash, and then it fades into perfect peace. And as you drift into sleep, you carry that rhythm with you, a rhythm as ancient as the stones and as tender as the last ember dying into ash. Good night.